Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. It's over, and it's just begun. With me to talk about this truly historic American presidential election, to discuss where we are as a nation, where we want to be, and how we might get there, are a collection of political junkies. A pollster, a political scientist, a journalist, and an historical figure. All City Talk wise guys. Dr. Roscoe C. Brown is the director of the Center for Urban Education Policy and is university professor at the CUNY Graduate Center. Micheline Blum is the director of the Baruch Survey Research. Sheryl McCarthy is a former Newsday columnist and host of CUNY TV's 1-to-1, and Tom Halper, an old dear friend, is chairman of the Political Science Department at Baruch College. Welcome, folks. Lots of smiles, I see. I don't know if that indicates, you know, how you voted. The headlines say it all. Obama, Mr. President. Oh, beautiful. So the news is we've got an African-American president who won a substantial popular majority and a significant electoral vote majority. Roscoe, could you ever imagine, have you imagined this?
Yes, I imagined it. I didn't think it was going to happen in my lifetime, but because of what happened after World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, Jackie Robinson, all of the people who've done so many things, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Oprah Winfrey, things were changing in this country. And the economic situation was such that race became a minimal issue. This country is at a watershed, and this election is a pivotal election that will be talked about in history for many, many hundreds of years.
Talk about your reaction when you knew that he won it. He had it. He had the numbers.
Well, I was in Londo's restaurant in Harlem.
Go ahead.
And we were there for this, and I looked at the clock. Somebody said NBC is going to say something at 11 o'clock. And at 11 o'clock, they say he won it, and the place just erupted. Right. Everybody looked around, high-fiving, smiling, hugging, and so on. It was like Emancipation Day. It was really a day where America showed that it could be America, and because of the hard work of Obama and all of those people who worked, we overcame. It happened.
Cheryl.
Well, you know, there's a singing group that had the Dells, who had a song called "Oh What a Night."
Oh, excuse us. We love it.
And that was my feeling. Oh, what a night! I was watching. You know, my husband was in front of on the sofa watching. I was in the bedroom watching from the bed. And sometimes, you know, because it was a long night, I went in and out of consciousness. But at some point, I gained consciousness, and he had won. You know, and this was after a number of days of. I think people were really nervous, you know, about, you know, which way it was going to, and even at the beginning of last night watching on TV, you still didn't know which way it was going to go. But it was just, the results were wonderful, both because he was such a fantastic candidate, substantively, because he's such a progressive, intelligent, thoughtful, charismatic candidate, but also because he's, you know, the first African American president, and, you know, to watch the kids in Harlem, the older black people who've been through so much, and they're crying and they're hugging each other, and the white people from all over the country who are so excited, and all these people gathered, you know, down outside of NBC headquarters in Harlem and all over the world.
Times Square.
You know, Times Square was like New Year's.
It was.
The amount of excitement. It was more exciting, I think, than, you know, JFK's election. Okay. He was a more exciting candidate.
Tom?
You know, as you look at this, it's almost as if the stars had to be aligned in a certain way. And I think if you go back to where Obama really entered the national stage, it was Illinois. So what had to happen? First of all, there had to be a vacant seat, because it's hard to beat an incumbent. So he had a vacant seat. Then there was a Democratic candidate who had lots of money, was very well funded. He was involved in a domestic abuse scandal. He was knocked out. Then there was a well-funded Republican candidate. He was involved in a sex club scandal with his wife. He was knocked out. So they bring in another candidate who was an absolute fringe candidate, didn't even live in Illinois, and he was black. So therefore, race was out of the election. So Obama won that, and now he has an election, and right in the midst of the election, the financial system collapses. So there are these, in a way you could say he's enormously lucky because everything had to be aligned just so. But at the same time, he had to be able to take advantage of that. Opportunity was knocking, but opportunity knocks all the time, and people don't always open the door. So opportunity was knocking, but he had to take advantage of it, and he has the kind of cool temperament and the cool intelligence that allowed him at every step of the way to take advantage of breaks. So you can't say he won because of luck. He won because he was able to take advantage of these circumstances. Not everybody could do that, but at the same time, the circumstances, I think, had to be just right. And it turned out they were. And I don't know how you could repeat them, really. And if you wrote them as a scenario for a movie, people might think it was a little too pat. But here we are.
Mickey.
Well, I guess the "Oh, what a night" is so appropriate. People were just jubilant, and when I looked at the pictures of Times Square last night, I thought this must have been what it was like on VE Day. That this must have been what it was like. All those pictures you see of Times Square of people celebrating the end of a war, because this, in a sense, was a victory, you know, and a victory over perhaps over a whole racial history that we've had. I don't know that, you know, it doesn't mean it's the end of everything, but of all racism, but it was such a victory for this country, and you could really feel that. And I think that one of the things in the numbers sort of that truly impressed me was that more white people voted for Obama than had voted for Kerry, you know,
or Gore.
And that was a wonderful thing, and that this wasn't just that people were voting against Bush or against, you know, because of the economy, or that this was somehow just sort of a negative election. This was such a positive election. There was so much enthusiasm, and people were so excited, and you did see people crying, and black and white, and that to me was just something so wonderful to see in our lifetime.
Talk about briefly the numbers. I mean, we began touching on, Tom began touching on some of the factors that allowed him to win, and go to the exit poll. I mean, what do we know?
Well, we know he put together, an amazing coalition, but it isn't. I think what's wonderful here is it isn't just, that he got a few groups and just sort of eked it out. He really won a substantial number of people really in almost all groups. And he won young people by a larger margin, but he really won across so many categories. And as I said, I mean, he won more white people than previous Democratic candidates. I mean, so while he won this overwhelming number of African American votes and an overwhelming number of Hispanic votes, it wasn't just that. It was that he reached across, and that his candidacy, when they talked about it being post-racial, and when he was such a good candidate, and he did not run just to be the first black president, but truly to be the president of all the people. And I think that message got across, and I think there's such, in the numbers, you see such confidence in him and in his ability to bring about the change that America wants. America wanted change, but they also had to have confidence that he was the one that could do it.
But see, Tom had the point about the stars being in alignment. This country is in the worst shape it has been in the 20th century. The economy, our foreign policy, the globalization of the world, the communication. America needs to take a new page, take another step. Last night was the first of that step, and that's why you had the young people, the old people, the white people, the Latinos, the African Americans say, let's go ahead and let's change this. And McCain, with all due respect to his war record and his long service, was the old guard. And when I looked at those pictures, and some of the commentators mentioned that, McCain was the old guard, a decent gentleman, but in the last century being the 20th century. Obama, young, vibrant, intelligent, aggressive, that's the new America. And that's why we brought all these young people and some of those of us who are older who wanted to see America take a different turn. So the stars lined up right, a brilliant campaign, and Obama is a brilliant orator. Last night's acceptance speech was absolutely beautiful, right on target, just like his speech about race, just like his speech at the '04 convention. Right there, laying it out there, optimism, hope, and that's where we ought to go, building on that. Now, the reality is the politicians. Now, what are the Democrats going to do now that they run both houses of Congress? What's going to happen in terms of the way in which we deal with the economy? What's going to happen with health care? What's going to happen with education? Today
Those are really good questions. Let's start answering.
Today is the first step of a long journey.
But I mean, at some point in this conversation, we want to talk about what is his agenda, what ought to be his agenda, and is it reasonable to expect? What can we expect? What do you expect?
Well, you know, the hard part, as you said, begins now. And I think, you know, one of the things, I think in the third debate, he said his first priority is to get us off of this energy dependency, this dependency on oil, you know, because that sort of shapes everything. And I think he's going to throw his attention to that. You know, healthcare is such a huge issue. And even though he has a far more aggressive plan for healthcare than McCain did, where he talks about expanding the employer-sponsored healthcare to government-sponsored, it's not enough. It's not going to be enough. You know, to bring Americans the health care they need at the price that they need it. I mean, you really, when you talk to people and what they're going through in terms of their health, you just need a single payer system or something very similar to it.
But he's got to focus in on a couple of key issues, and you suggest energy and health care.
Yes,
Tom, what do you see the political terrain? I mean, there's landmines here. There are traps.
I think it's very important that he prioritize. He can only accomplish so much. I think Reagan was very smart here. Reagan picked out a couple things he was going to focus on, and he gave lip service to everything else, and that's what he has to do. To me, clearly, the overriding concern is the economy, and he has to address that first. And my hunch is that, as a practical matter, he will move on taxes. I guess I have a different view on energy. I think people talk about energy independence. It's a mantra that you hear at every campaign, but to me, it's not a genuine issue. This country is not going to be energy independent for the foreseeable future, and
we're less dependent anyway.
I just see only moves at the margin. So I don't expect anything major there. But I would say that he will try to move on the economy. He'll try to move on taxes. And of all of the social programs, I believe that clearly health care is his top priority. But he will have to address the others first. And let's not forget the war. I mean, the war is kind of off center stage. And everybody was aware of this great irony where McCain is boosting the surge. That gets him the nomination, but then it has the effect of taking it off the stage, and his advantage evaporates, and he's left talking about the economy, and everybody knows he doesn't know anything about it.
Right, and it's self-admitted.
So somehow Obama will have to do something with that. Now, I don't know how he will play it. He may feel that he'd like to keep it. He's happy with the way it is now, off stage, and he can he can focus on the economy and on taxes and just let things continue. I don't know. At the same time, of course, you have Afghanistan, which is really deteriorating rapidly. What's he going to do there? He's been talking about sending a lot of troops there, but it's not obvious that that's the way to go. Maybe the way to go is to try to reach some kind of deal and
get out
and get out. The Afghanistan has been a graveyard for empires for generations. You know, maybe it would
Centuries, in fact.
Centuries. Maybe it's not the place to emphasize. I don't know.
Looking at the numbers, what drove the election, and therefore what, in a sense, ought to be the priorities?
Well, I think I agree with Tom here. That we see very clearly in here in the numbers, that the economy is the overriding issue, and that is the thing that I think he has to deal with first. I also think that, you know, we learn a little bit from the Clinton era. You need a few successes in the beginning. You really need you do need to prioritize as a president, and you need to focus on something, and you need the success early, because if you don't get that, it sets everything off wrong.
No gays in the military.
Right. It's right. You know, and I think that Obama has that very sort of good sense to prioritize and to know that the thing that's worrying people is the economy. Because even as they think about health care, we also saw in the numbers that the thing that they're worried about is that they can't afford their health care, and that it really all revolves around the economy, that people are very concerned about their own families at all levels of income, that people are concerned about their families' economic future. And I think it is something that he needs to do just to reassure people and to be able to get the confidence of the American people, so he can move on to the other things that are very important.
But you recall the New Deal, Franklin Roosevelt came in an economic crisis. He immediately started programs, Works Progress Administration, Reconstruction Finance Agency, Public Works. And that's the kind of thing I think Obama will do. We've been talking about the infrastructure. People identify with that. We've been talking about the jobs that creates. People identify with that. We can do the energy thing with green infrastructure. And then the tax problem about making taxes more fair, getting rid of the Bush tax cuts, those are the things that he can do immediately. Then the other things, like the war, is the second thing he needs to deal with. But that's on the process already. There's a timetable already in works. He can work on that. The healthcare situation is much more difficult. That's what almost sunk the Clinton administration. They started out on healthcare,
really hard,
and that set them back. And it's only when they got into the economy and began to move the economy that they got the second term. So those are the kind of things I think he's doing. And he has a wonderful group of advisors. He has a number of academicians. He has a number of corporate people. He has a number of people from the Clinton administration. How the administration will look is very interesting. You can probably take bets on who's going to be where.
Okay, lay some bets. Come on.
I haven't been asked yet.
But you will be, Roscoe.
I'll ask you. What do you want? I mean, come on. I'm a guy from Queens.
Justice for all.
So we're going to make you Secretary of what? Fairness and Justice?
That's a great idea. Department of Fairness and Justice.
Okay, Roscoe, you're your first nominee.
But seriously,
go ahead.
There are the people. They've been talking about Rubin and Volcker involved in the economy. They've been talking about Colin Powell involved in the State Department.
Again.
And there's some good young people. See, the thing that some of us who've been around for a while don't realize there's some people that's smarter than us who are in the pipeline. And they've been working through. And the one thing you say about the Obama campaign, they involved everybody. There was a tremendous amount of young, intelligent people with experience as well. So I wouldn't take bets on who's going to be there, but I know it's going to be a great cabinet. I know they have a transition going. John Podesta, I think, is heading the campaign transition. This is going to be an exciting time. The one thing that I think African Americans have to be aware of is that things are not going to change overnight. It took us a long time to get where we are. It took us a long time to get Obama there. So therefore, we've got to work together on many of those pragmatic solutions to difficult problems. And one thing I like about Obama, he talked about the responsibility of parents for their kids, the responsibility of the community. When you're a victim, it's easy to absorb the victim syndrome. You have to go beyond that. And that's what Obama makes it possible for us to do.
Excellent. Let's turn away from Obama in a sense and sort of the underlying or the manifest issue of race, and let's just talk about gender a bit. We had an historic election in that sense as well. We had a woman on the Democratic side who nearly captured the nomination, came very close both in delegates and in fact, depending on your count, broke even in the popular vote with 18 million votes. And then you have a woman as the vice presidential candidate on the Republican ticket. What does it say something about American politics that in the same cycle you've got two women, or is this a unique event? I mean, your sense of what this race meant to women as women, if there's such a thing.
Well, Hillary Clinton, I sort of soured on her sort of early on, but I think, towards the end, I think she ran a terrific campaign, and the fact that she was out there, the fact that Sarah Palin was out there as, real nominees for some of the top offices, opens up the country's mind to the fact that women can, run these campaigns, they can hold these offices. I mean, leading up to Obama, you had to have a whole number of people who went before him, whether it was Shirley Chisholm, whether it was, Jesse Jackson, to open up the idea that, a black person was qualified to be president. I think that's happening with women as well. I always believed that we would have a black male president before we would have a Jewish president or a woman president. And that has turned out to be true.
Tougher to be a woman.
Tougher to be a woman, yeah.
And politically tougher to be a woman.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. I think that what's interesting here is that I think there was a step forward and possibly a step back.
Talk about Palin.
In Palin, because in fact, when we look at the numbers, we see that 60% of the people thought that Sarah Palin was not qualified. And so that was not a step ahead for women. And in fact, it was probably one of the things that really hurt John McCain, in that I think a lot of women were insulted, felt that it was a sort of a cynical choice, a choice trying to get at the Hillary voters, or appeal on a gender, just on the basis of gender.
You know my wife, and you do too. That was our reaction.
Just on the basis of gender, and that I think that actually turned off a certain number of women, and it clearly obviously didn't work, because the Hillary voters went heavily to Obama. They followed Hillary's lead, and they certainly went there, but.
See, I'm afraid of a kind of a backlash from the conservatives, because some of those rock-ribbed conservatives were very, very concerned about the direction of the Democratic Party, and when you listen to some of them on their talk radio, they're still saying, we got to step up, we got to fight again. And this is like fighting a civil war again. We can't do that. So that's the reason why his speech about reaching across the aisle is very, very important. And he's going to need surrogates. He's going to need Congress people. He's going to need Congresswomen. He's going to need people from the religious community to reach across, because that conservative backlash is very, very difficult in this country. We've got to be prepared for it.
And McCain is cognizant of that. I mean, I thought his speech was gracious and extended a hand of help. But let's go to the political question that you raised, Roscoe, and that is whether the Republican Party, does the Republican Party become a regional religious party in the United States, or do they have a Dr. Phil moment and somehow rethink this? Tom?
I think we've seen this cycle before, and the Republican Party lost, but they made a reasonably respectable showing. We can, I think, predict that probably in 2 years they'll improve in Congress. I think they're very far from being out of business, but there are, in these situations, always a battle between the true believers who feel committed, as Roscoe said, to certain principles and certain policies, and then the others who are more practical, who say, well, we have to reach beyond our base if we want to get elected. And I think the Palin phenomenon illustrated this very well. She was chosen to energize the base. The price of energizing the base was driving away the marginals.
She lost all
and that turned out to be too high a price. So they're in kind of a dilemma. If you have somebody like a Reagan who can feed the base these kind of verbal jelly beans, you know, they'll be happy. But if you don't have a person like that with that kind of appeal, and the base really wants red meat, then you have a problem, because if you give them red meat, you're driving away other people. I guess I believe that they're going to have a rough time for a little while, but they're going to come back. Related to this, I think, is the fact of this great euphoria over Obama. I think that we have to remember, first of all, he's too hot not to cool down. That's not the Dells, but that's the best I can do.
That's pretty good.
No, it's not bad.
You know, now he hasn't really come out for anything. He's come out just, you know, he's run a great campaign because he's been general and vague, and he's followed the commandments of campaigning, and that's what you have to do. But once you're in office and you have to make,
you actually have,
you have to govern.
It's a lot harder.
And he's going to have a base who's going to be pushing him for certain things like a single-payer health care. And then he's going to have the blue dog Democrats who are going to say, if you do this, we're out of here. And he's going to have some problems. So that euphoria is going to dissipate. And as it dissipates, people are going to think they were misled and betrayed, when actually they weren't. It was just that they were naive, and they're beginning to wake up. There are going to be problems for Obama when this euphoria starts to fade.
One word. I mean, you know, this is the lightning round. One word answers. Your total emotional feeling and intellectual feeling. What do you feel now, today, the day after the election, Mickey?
Do I feel I feel a lot of energy and optimism, actually.
Roscoe.
Hope and challenge.
Delighted, relieved, optimistic.
I feel mostly relief.
Very good.
I feel relief in the larger sense that the Bush years are just about over, and I feel relief in the smaller sense. My wife will no longer be watching MSNBC 17 hours a day.
Screaming at the New York Post.
Go away.
Telling me about the latest outrage. So I feel relief there.
I do too. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. Great pleasure. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.